name's Kevin, partner from makingyourown.candles.co.uk, where you'll find the UK's widest selection of candle making kits and materials. In this video I'm going to show you how to make these charming little decorative candles. There's actually 4 shapes. I'm going to use this robust tray mould to make them. This is not like some of the tray moulds you might find in cheap kits. This is strong and can be used many times. Okay, in this video we're actually going to make all 4 shapes in one go. I'm going to make 2 of a solid colour, 1 red, 1 white, and 2 striped candles that are red and white. We're going to be using 250 grams of Eco Sawyer Pillar Blend. The benefit of Eco Sawyer in this case is that it has its own colour. It doesn't require the addition of any dye in order to produce a nice creamy colour like this one. We're going to use a strawberry coloured dye. We're also going to use a wick LX18, that one is. We're going to, perhaps slightly surprisingly, use self-centering tabs, but I'll explain why that is later. We've got 4 of our patented wick sticks, 1 for each mould, a stirrer, some blue tack, some scissors, pliers, and then behind me we have a double boiler for melting the wax. If you've not melted wax before, it's very simple. All you need is the same sort of equipment you would use to melt chocolate. Don't try and melt it directly over the cooker. You need to sit it in a water bath in what's known as a double boiler setup. So in this case I'm using a porringer set which has water in the lower saucepan, and in the top saucepan, which sits in a water bath, you'll put the wax so that it won't ever get above about 90 degrees. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is melt the wax. As I said, this is an Eco Sawyer Pillar Blend, which produces these lovely flakes. So that goes straight into the double boiler, back on a low heat. The water's already boiled in there, so it won't take very long. But while that's melting, take a look at the mould. The way this works is that the top of the candle is that side, the top of the candle is the bottom of the mould, and each mould has a hole in it, so we're going to need to thread a wick through each of those holes before we can fill it with wax. But before we thread the wick through, we need to cut it to size. Around a finger length is about right, because you'll want it so that you can handle it simply enough. So I want 4 of those. I'm getting a bit bigger as I do them. And before we actually use those, we're going to prime these by dropping them in the wax. So I'll be back in a moment when the wax is melted. Right, the wax is now melted. What we're going to do is take each of the 4 pieces of wick and just drop them in, and then just stir them around a bit. Now, as you can see, this porringer set is just essentially a smaller saucepan sitting inside a larger saucepan. So you can just as easily do exactly that by 2 cheap saucepans, one larger than the other. Fill the bottom one up to around 1/3 with water and put it on the heat, and then put the wax in the top pan, and then it's only the action of the water that heats the wax. Don't recommend other techniques such as using a microwave to do it. I personally don't fancy ruining my microwave. Okay, so they've been in there a few seconds. I'm just going to fish them out. What that does is that primes the wax, makes them primes the wicks, makes them easier to handle. and also it means that they'll draw up the wax better when they're lit. It certainly saves the extra expense of buying pre-waxed wick. So there we go. So I'm just going to pop this double boiler back on to keep warm. Okay, so now we take the tray, and for each one we just need to thread the pre-waxed wick through the hole and out the other side. So there's a reasonable amount on each side. We'll trim the wick at the end. And then just take a bit of blue tack. And then press it over where the wick comes through the hole and seal it nice and firmly. And what we're doing there is sealing the hole so the wax doesn't leak through. And we're left with that. And repeat with the next one. I did cut that a bit long. That's what comes of guessing. Again, seal the bottom. Star one is my favourite. Finally, the heart one. Again, that goes through there, through the hole and out the bottom. And blue tack the top. Seal it. There we go. Now they're now ready. So, as I said, what I'm going to be making is 2 candles with a solid colour, so 1 white and 1 red, and then 2 candles that are in layers, like this one. I'll have the white on the bottom, and the reason for that is that I want to pour, it's much more convenient to pour the undyed wax first, because then you don't have to clean the pan out before adding the second layer. So what I'm going to be doing is filling one of these. We'll make the heart will be red naturally. This sort of chrysanthemum shape will be white. And then the flower and the star will be layered. So first of all I'm going to pour the white, which means I won't pour any in the heart. I'll fill this one up and only half fill each of those. So that's the next step. Now then, contrary to what some people say, you don't need to measure the temperature of this wax before pouring. This wax will work perfectly well in this recipe by being poured when it's simply nice and liquid like this, which makes life simpler. So we're going to start by filling the chrysanthemum. You don't want to go right to the top because that might give you problems later. And then I'm going to half fill each of the other 2 moulds. Whoops, cack-handed. There we go. This can then go back on the heat. Okay, we now need to keep the wick straight, so we take one of these lollipop sticks with a hole in, or as they're otherwise known, wick pins, or wick sticks. Place them across the mould like that, and then they can just sit there freely supporting themselves, because the wick's only short, and the wax will keep them straight. So if you'd wanted all the candles to be of the same colour, you would simply have poured the whole lot, having added any dye if you wanted them to be anything other than white. What we're going to do now is just going to leave this now until a skin has formed, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Right, welcome back. A skin has now formed on all of the poured candles. But obviously I'm only actually refilling the two smaller ones, and the skin formed more quickly on those. So I'm just going to take out the wick pins. I've added my dye. In this case, a couple of grams. Into the porringer, which you can see there. I'm now going to pour on the two that I want to make stripy candles in. So I'm just going to fill, more or less fill anyway. The reason that we don't allow the candles to go completely cold before the second pour is that the wax of the second pour will adhere better to the first pour if it's poured over warm wax. If you let it go cool, you might find that the two layers come apart. So those two have now been filled, and the last job is just to make the heart-shaped candle. Okay, so they're all done. Just put the wick pin back through. On each of them, just to keep it nice and straight. There are some little pins in the mould that will help you position your wick pin so that it's nice and straight. I've actually slightly overfilled that one, so I'm going to just lean that on there so it doesn't touch the surface. Now then, the last thing we need to do for each of the moulds is to add one of these self-centering tabs. Now it might seem a little bit odd to add a tab to a pillar candle, but what we found when we burnt these candles is that if you don't do it, you'll find that the wick will just fall over well before the candle has finished burning. By adding one of these tabs, we can ensure that it doesn't do that. So what you need to do is just push it through like that, whoops, and then just push it into the surface the surface of the candle. And there we go. And although it looks a bit odd, particularly since I've spilt a bit of red dye on there, it's all on there, that's fine. Okay, that will do a good job of making the candle more usable. What will happen now is that we'll allow those to set more or less fully, and what we'll find is that the centres will dip. That's a feature of pillar blend waxes, and it's deliberate. It's to enable the wax shrinks on cooling to enable it to be pulled in from the sides of the mould and then released. Without that shrinking, it wouldn't be releasable. But that also has the effect of causing it to dip around the wick. So we're going to do a final pour once that's done, and then our candles will be finished. See you in a bit. These tray candles have had a chance to cool down now, and you can see that they've dipped in the centre and they're beginning to pull away from the sides. So we're just going to top up the candles so that they'll be ready once they've fully cooled to be popped out. Okay, so we reheat our red wax, and it's just a case of topping them carefully up into all the corners like that. As you can see, I've covered over the tabs, that's not visible. Same with the heart. Flower. Oh, I made a bit of a dog's breakfast of that one. Yeah, maybe back to the drawing board with that one. I overfilled it, as I said earlier, on the first pour. And that is the consequence. The others will be fine. That one I can just trim off the excess. Now, obviously, we've got a white one here. And with that one, I just had to heat up another batch of white or undyed soy wax, just to fill that one up and just encourage it into the edges. Alright, so that's job done. Just need to leave these to fully cool and then we can pop them out. The tray candles are fully set now, and you'll probably remember that I messed up the pouring of this one, but I've been able to go around with a palette knife and just, once it had set a little bit, and just take out the extra layer, and also on this one. And as a little tip, if you do that, you might need to just repair the surface a little bit, and that's easily done just with a hairdryer or a heat gun on a low setting. So that's what I've done. These are now ready to come out, which is pretty simple with a mould like this because it's so shallow. All we're going to do is take off the blue tack, sealing the wick. And then they may just even fall out. So that one there is that's the one I repaired. So it's turned out absolutely fine. What we do is just cut the surplus wick off the bottom, trim the wick at the top to about ½ centimetre or so, like that. And then we have a very nice star-shaped layered candle. Let's try the others. Oh. The heart, which of course is in red. Very pleased with that one. Again, just trim the wicks top and bottom. This is the chrysanthemum. You can see on the top there the shape of the flower. And finally, the white one, just being a bit more awkward. There we go. There we have it. 4 candles, each of a different type. 2 of them layered, 2 of them solid colours. So this 4-in-1 tray gives you the flexibility to make any of the 4 different candle shapes in any quantity you like. Naturally, you can buy this from us at makingyourown.candles.co.uk in a kit form, which contains not only the tray mould but also everything you would need to create 2-colour candles of your choice, or you can buy the tray mould separately from us and all the other ingredients as you wish. Thanks for watching.